All right, good morning.
Good morning.
This is the first week of January. The reason we point that out is because we are going through a Bible reading plan together through the Bible year as a family, as a church. And if you don't happen to go to Canyon Creek and you want to follow along with us, hey, jump on in. Welcome to the team. We are going through a Bible reading plan we found where?
On heartlight.org.
Heartlight.org. And the very divinely inspired reason we're going through that one is?
Because we wanted one where we go through the Bible book by book.
Okay, that's the official answer. The real reason was because it was easy to print out. And so we printed it out, handed it out at church. Heartlight.org. Here's why I say it's not really that big a deal why we picked that one. If you read the Bible on Logos or Faith Life or YouVersion, whatever. If there's if you read through it online and there's a click software Bible reading plan, hey, feel free to jump on that. I don't care which plan you use. Going through the Bible in a year is a great plan regardless of how they divvy it up. And if you read this Bible every day, it's going to change your life. Heartlight or Heartlight?
Heartlight.
Heartlight.org is where we happen to get ours because they lay it out really well. It's easy to get a bunch of people on the same page. Sometimes you go through like chronologically, right? Sometimes I've done one where it's a little bit of Old Testament, a little bit of New Testament, the Psalm. And so this year we're just kind of going book by book through it. And this weekly video series is really just a time of coffee with Christians. If you were at our breakfast table and we're drinking coffee and you're going through the reading plan, it wouldn't look a whole lot different than what we're doing here. It's just, hey, as I read this week, here's what I saw, or here's what I learned or didn't like. And so, yeah, super casual. You ready to jump in it?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So this week covered about the first half of Genesis, roughly. And one of the questions I often get when we get in Genesis is, how big a deal is it if I believe in a 6-day creation? Or is it okay if I believe millions of years? And is that metaphorical anyway? What are your thoughts?
I think it is a literal 6-day, 24-hour-a-day creation. And I don't know why that's super important, but it is something I've been trying to look into a little bit. Such as one of the things I've read recently or heard recently is the order of how the Lord created things. Like plants needed sunlight, they needed light, and if my understanding is correct, the order of that. So
what you're talking about, for instance, so let's see, it was light, heavens and water, then it was dry land, then he filled the light, so it was the stars. Day 4 was so day 4 you've got the birds and the fish, but then you don't have plants and animals until day 5. And so how did the birds and fish live without the plants, so to speak? Mm-hmm. If it was kind of like when you're talking about each day was a million years kind of thing, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I kind of think about it like this. So certain people put a gap, it's called the gap theory, between verse like 1 and 3. So basically it's the earth's millions of years, but the 6 days of creation didn't start till millions of years later, but he still created it in 6 days. And okay, I guess, but here's kind of the thought on that. First, let's talk about how we got here, and then let's talk about why it's kind of a big deal. Sound fair?
Sure.
Okay. You and I were recently watching You've Got Mail. Remember that?
Yes.
So You've Got Mail, Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Tom Hanks ends up standing up Meg Ryan, kind of not. Anyway. And so she goes back to her little bookshop, and they say, "You got stood up?" and they feel bad for her, so they're coming up with all these reasons of what could have happened. And so it's maybe I forget right now, but one of the things, so they kind of each have a different reason that maybe you didn't get stood up, maybe this emergency happened or that emergency happened. And then they look at the headlines and some guy got arrested like right there, and they're like, oh, maybe it's this guy. And so why do I bring that up? So basically it's kind of like this. If you look at the evidence says, okay, here's what happened. It supports what the Bible says. And then someone said, well, what if I don't like God? Is there any other way this could have happened, right? And so so you can kind of come up with all these other different thoughts from the same, we're all looking at the same thing. You have these different angles. Unless, of course, at the end of the movie, Tom Hanks shows up and tells her what happens. And that's kind of what we have, is we're all looking at the same thing from different angles, and we're all entitled to our opinion until someone actually shows up and is like, no, this is what happened, which is what we have. But here's why it's a big deal. If, and I guess I should say this, if they date the layers by the stuff that's in it, right? The rock layers. This rock layer has Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tyrannosaurus Rex lived that many years ago. This rock layer must be from the Paleozoic period or whatever. I don't know. I'm not the right, but it's that many years old. Okay, this rock layer must be that old. Therefore, what's in the rock layer has to be that old. Mm-hmm. Okay,
right.
Since this thing in the rock layer is that old, and so it's a circle, and they just kind of, so there's no real science behind it, but here's why it's a big deal, and here's why a Christian can't believe in it. One, there's the argument, it's in there, that's what it means. There's the argument that Jesus refers to it, but here's the other thing, and here's why it's a theological thing. If the rock layers happened millions of years ago, and these fossils weren't put down by the flood of Noah, they were put down through billions of years. What that means is billions of years ago, we have, or millions of years ago, or whatever the new number is, we have animals dying, which means we have death before Adam and Eve sinned in the curse.
Right. And
if we have death before the curse, then what that means is God didn't create the world to be good, and we have six times, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good. Mm-hmm. So he didn't create it to be good, he created it for death. And so when someone says, well, why would God create a world with so much death? As Christians, you and I go, well, he didn't. We screwed this up.
Right.
But if we believe in the fossil layer, then we have to go, yeah, God created a world full of death and destruction, animals eating animals, and then when we got here, Adam and Eve's sin didn't make that much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's a million ways of why that's important. But I would say just the chief is, did God make the world good? Or did God make the world this animal eat animal, death and destruction, millions of years of dead animals stacked up with each other? And I don't think the rest of the Bible supports that.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one of the questions.
Wow. That's a good one.
Let's talk about, quickly, Genesis chapter 5, because Leviticus and Numbers often get the bad rap, but honestly, Genesis 5 is often where a lot of Bible reading plans come to die. And it is so-and-so had so-and-so who begot so-and-so who begot so-and-so, right? First of all, what does it mean to beget? Does your Bible, do they all say beget, or have they updated that?
Let's see. I read different versions. So This particular one says became the father of Enosh.
Became the father of. Okay, well there you go. That's what beget means. It means to become the father of. And so when you read only begotten son of John 3:16, it doesn't mean his only conceived, like Jesus wasn't around forever and then he became. When he says only begotten son, of course we're all sons of God. Mm-hmm. But there's very specific theological stuff going on there. Okay. Chapter 5. Why does it matter? Is it just this boring long list of names to skip over?
I think it matters because there's prophecies about how Jesus came about. And I think if you look into genealogies, you're going to see that is proof of some of those prophecies.
Yeah. I think, too, it kind of flies in the face of Adam. Some people say Adam and Eve were metaphorical people. Well, if Adam and Eve were metaphorical, then Noah had to be metaphorical. Because Noah was the son of Lamech, who was the son of, and then you go back. And so I think on one hand, it really points to, look, this isn't a story these people really lived. They were really around. I think the other cool thing is it gives us the age. It gives us how old the earth was when God flooded it. And then I think, and this is kind of the thing, I like teaching out of this because most people don't realize that, like Adam's kids were alive at the same time as Noah's dad, right? And so when you look at how long these guys lived, it's not one big game of telephone. It tells how they were when the next guy got born, etc. And a lot of these guys lived not coherent, at the same time as each other. And then let's see, is there so I think there was one other reason, but yeah, I think really just kind of saying, look, these things really happen. Oh, and then I think too, mathematically, if you're a math nerd like me, I mathed this out one time. The age of the patriarchs before the flood, and then the age of the patriarchs in the years after the flood, show this really cool exponential rate of decay that we would expect it to see, that Moses wouldn't have had the math for back then, which is just one more mathematical proof or piece of evidence for this being true. So, all right. So if you're reading through Genesis chapter 5 and you're like, why does this matter? Honestly, just Google like a visual, like if you see it on a graph, it'll really help that stick in your mind. And then one last question for the week. Genesis, and it was so funny. Genesis chapter 19, WTH. And for the purpose of this video, podcast, whatever, H is going to stand for what the heck.
Let's see.
Genesis 19.
Okay.
There's a story where so Abraham gets visited by the Lord and a couple angels, and they say, hey, we're going to go destroy Sodom. He says, don't. Oh, okay. And it turns out that he's going to go do it anyway. And so the angels go down there to get Lot out of the town.
Yes.
Okay. And so the story is these men are banging on Lot's door saying, hey, you've got a couple men in there, bring them out. We want to know them, which is a biblical way of saying, we want to have sex with them. Like, bring these guys out so we can rape them, is essentially the story. And so, and here's kind of the problematic part that bothers a lot of people. Lot decides, hey, I've got a couple of young ladies here that no one's ever known either. Why don't I bring out my virgin daughters? You guys can rape them. And then, of course, the angels blind them and some stuff goes on. And so the question is, Genesis chapter 19, WTH. What the heck? Thoughts? Has that passage ever bothered you? Have you ever thought about that?
Yes, it very much bothers me.
Okay. See, no,
yeah,
we're getting real here at the
bothers me
home.
The fact that he would say, here, take my daughters instead.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's questions about the angels wanting to do this, but then too, just the father saying, take my daughters instead.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the protection there? Where's the fierce,
right.
This is wrong. Yes, that really bothers me.
Okay. All right. Next. No, I'm just kidding. So when we go through and we read passages in the Old or New Testament, really that really bother us, we have to keep a couple things in mind. One is not everything in the Bible is prescriptive. This is not a story ultimately about Lot. This is a story about Jesus. This is a story about how we got here. And so part of the story is how the Moabites and the Ammonites came along. And so he's telling a bigger story. And so we can't think this is the story. And the reason I bring that up is when the Bible tells us that Lot did this, the Bible is not telling us this is how you should, this is what you should do.
Right.
It's saying, look at what this guy did.
Right.
Okay. And so the other thing is, because this is not a story about Lot, it's a story about Jesus, is we can't look at this and say Lot's the good guy here. Mm-hmm. Because if this was, the hero of the story and this is what he did, we'd say, well, this is what you should do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Lot's not the hero of the story here. And so we don't look and go, oh, this is how you should treat women because this guy did it. In fact, that thing that rises up in our heart that says, not only should a man not do this to a lady, a dad should definitely not do this for his kid. We know in our heart that a parent protects the child. The parent does not hide behind the child.
Right.
And again, because this is a picture of Jesus, we have a picture of our Father. In a minute, this is buried in the story of Abraham, right? Mm-hmm. And the story of Abraham is, Abraham, your son is not going to die for me. I'm going to send my son to die for you, right? So this thing that says, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he would send his daughters out there. Well, that's in us because the Lord put it in us. And so just because it's in the Bible, we don't read it and think, oh, it's okay, or God was putting a stamp of approval on it, or this is the good guy. Kind of like when we're watching, a movie today and we see the villain do something awful, we don't go, oh, I can't believe they want us to do that, right? That's the bad guy. And in the Bible, there's the good guy, Jesus, and then there's the bad guy, everyone else.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. And then I would say, and this is interesting because remember what happens, and the angels blind the people. They don't let the ladies go out there. So the angels protect these ladies. Lot runs off, and do you remember the next part of the story? So Lot ends up in a cave.
Don't remember.
His daughters get him drunk, and essentially they rape him. And so the two ladies that he was putting out there to be sexually taken advantage of or raped end up doing the same thing to him. And I think it's interesting. This really kind of tells you the culture we live in. No one ever calls me and says, hey, pastor, I think it's really, really upsetting that those ladies raped that man. Like, no one really gets all upset about that. But we see the irony? Justice, whatever whatever it is. We see it turn around when Lot's daughters get him drunk and then have unconsensual sex with him. All right, so we've kind of covered some ground. Next week we're gonna in the Bible reading plan we're gonna be almost finishing up Genesis. Here's the thing. If you want to jump in on this, you can, if you're part of Canyon Creek, you can write out questions, throw them in the offering plate. Those will get priority as far as what we answer. You can comment or text wherever you're watching this video or listening to this. And I guess, or you could just give us a text and carrier pigeon. I don't care. But if you want to be part of this, if you're reading through your Bible reading plan, which we hope you are, we invite you to do it with us, and you come across questions, and we don't shy away from hard questions here. If you're like, man, I've always wanted to ask this and it just doesn't seem right, fire it away and we'll answer it next week. And we look forward to making our way through this book with you this year.
Yep.
All right. Closing thoughts?
No.
Anything else that you want to cover?
I think that one of the big things that stuck out to me is how God continues to pursue his people.
Mm.
And starting right there in the Garden of Eden, you know, they were sinning and he pursued them regardless. He pursues us, and that was the big takeaway for me over this past week.
Cool. All right. See you guys next week.